Yo guys, you are welcome to the MBBS Niger, the right YouTube channel for every medical student worldwide. And today we'll be talking about a very important topic. We'll be talking about the pharyngeal apparatus. In the pharyngeal apparatus, we'll be talking about the pharyngeal arches. We'll be talking about the clefts or grooves. I'll be talking about the pouches, right? And the pharyngeal apparatus will actually be concentrated on the various body parts that these arches, pouches, or clefts actually differentiate into. Okay, and the pharyngeal apparatus is actually a is the pharyngeal apparatus is actually an embryology based stuff. All right, so without waste of time, I would like us to continue on our lecture on the pharyngeal apparatus. All right, so what is the pharyngeal apparatus, also known as the branchial apparatus? The introduction. And the branchial or pharyngeal apparatus is the equivalent is like an equivalent of the gill in fish. Okay, this is why on the evolutionary trend, and somebody could tell you that and humans actually evoluted from these animals is because in the embryo there are great similarities between the embryos of these animals. Okay, right, it develops as a complex structure in human embryo between the head and the thorax. Don't worry, we'll get to see the picture we are talking about. Now, very important for you to note, this is for you to know that the pharyngeal apparatus develops in the fourth week. The pharyngeal apparatus develops in the fourth week. All right, so it's a bilateral ridge, it's on both sides, and grooves that develop into numerous anatomic structure of the head, of the face, of the palate, and the anterior part of the neck. Okay, and the various structures in the pharyngeal apparatus develop into the facial muscles and all that. We'll get to see everything. Okay, understanding the apparatus explains the distribution of the cranial nerves in parts of the head and neck. So understanding the pharyngeal apparatus is very important because it will actually show you how these nerves are distributed in and the head and the neck. So what are the components of the pharyngeal apparatus, right? From the image on the left, you could see the pharyngeal apparatus. It is 1 2 3 4 6, right? I don't get it twisted. There's the fifth one, but the fifth pharyngeal apparatus is rudimentary. Okay, and the fifth pharyngeal apparatus is rudimentary and doesn't develops into anything. Okay, you could see the proper image here. You could see the fifth pharyngeal apparatus is actually crossed because it doesn't develop into anything, but it's rudimentary and disappears later on. So, what is the location and appearance of this pharyngeal apparatus? The pharyngeal apparatus is actually the position of the future head and neck, right? It's lateral to the cranial part of the foregut, right? You could see that it develops into 6 arches, and this arch is the fifth arch later degenerates. All right, and later on we have the only 5 arches. Okay, there's presence of 3 embryonic layers. You have the ectoderm, we have the mesoderm, we have the endoderm. Okay, and there's presence of external grooves, right, and internal pouches, right. We also have membranes. Okay, so I think you should derive a memory aid for this: pharyngeal arches, pharyngeal pouches, pharyngeal and clefts, pharyngeal membrane. It should be APCM. A is arches, P is pouches, C is cleft, and M is membrane. Okay, just study these images as we move on. Another image explaining. All right, I think you could focus on the image while I try to read what they wrote here. There's a disappearance of the fifth arch. Okay, we have clefts, we have pouches, we have membranes, don't forget. All right, so you could see the arch we are talking about. Right, you could see the arch there. You could see the cleft. The cleft is like a groove in between and two arches, and you could see the pouches. All right, the pouches is like the covering of the arch. Okay, you could see on the right side, you could see the first arch, second arch, third arch, fourth arch, and so on. Okay, you could see actually the real pharyngeal pouch. Okay, not magnified. This is like it was actually observed through a microscope, right? It's a 32-week embryo, right? You can see it. All right, so let's talk about the embryonic structure of the pharyngeal development. All right, this is from superficial to deep. We got to see that the pharyngeal apparatus actually has 4 layers. That's the ectoderm, right? Ectoderm, anything ecto is the outside. The mesoderm, that's the middle, and the endoderm, that's the outer, and that's the inner, right? So on the ectoderm we have the pharyngeal groove and cleft. Okay, on the mesoderm, what is the on the inside? We have muscles, we have cartilage, we have nerves, we have artery. Okay, and what about the endoderm? The endoderm, we have the pharyngeal pouch. All right, the pharyngeal pouch, that's the innermost part. That's the pharyngeal pouch. Okay, what is the component of the pharyngeal arches? All right, you could see that the pharyngeal arch has an artery, and the pharyngeal arch has a nerve, and the pharyngeal arch has a cartilage too. Okay, it has the can, that's a CAN, cartilage, artery, and nerve. You could see the pharyngeal pouch, you could see the ectoderm. Okay, the pharyngeal pouch is the innermost. Okay, all right, it's on the endoderm. You could see the spinal cord, you could see the pharyngeal clefts. Okay, you can see the first arch, second arch, third arch. You could see the laryngeal opening too. And with these guys, I hope we are following up this lecture. This is just trying to you should always remember that the pharyngeal pouch, the pharyngeal apparatus develops in between the head and the the thorax region, and it's actually having the pharyngeal arch, the pharyngeal pouches, the pharyngeal clefts, the pharyngeal membrane. Okay, and so what are the derivatives? I told you that most of these structures, they have future derivatives. All right, they actually develop into future components of the body. So what are the derivatives of the pharyngeal arches? Okay, all right, so you could focus on the image on the left while I speak to you. All right, so the future derivatives of the pharyngeal arches, all right, it derives into the ear, all right, develops into the tongue, develops into the palatonsil tonsil. All right, so anything I'm like talking about, you try to find the image on the left side. And talking about the ear, that's the external auditory meatus. All right, you could see it there. All right, it develops into the thyroid, ultimobranchial body, and it also develops into the thymus gland. Okay, I think with this you have seen all these that I'm talking about on the image. You have seen everything on the image too. Okay, superior parathyroid gland. Okay, from the fourth pouch you see the thyroid gland too. Inferior parathyroid gland, right, from the third pouch. All right, so this model actually shows a developing pharyngeal arch. Okay, you can see the pharyngeal on the left. I'm talking about the image on the left. It just shows the pouches, that's the innermost part. It shows the cleft, that's the space that is differentiating, is like dividing different pharyngeal arches, right? You can see the mandibular process. I think that's developing from the first pharyngeal arch and so on. You could see the external meatus. All right, further development of the pharyngeal pouch. I'm talking about the image on the right now. You could see the external auditory meatus that is developing from the pharyngeal cleft. Okay. You could see the tympanic tympanic cavity. You could see the auditory lobe. You could see the palatonsa. You could see the thymus gland, and that is differentiating downward. Okay. And what is the ectodermal derivatives of the pharyngeal arches? All right. And so you could see that the first cleft differentiates into the external auditory meatus and into the tympanic membrane. All these are components of the ear. We already saw in the image. If you haven't seen the image, you could see here, right? You could see that it's differentiating into the external auditory meatus. That's from the first cleft, the first groove that is dividing the first arch and the second arch, right? And you could see that it further develops into the tympanic cavity too. So the second, the third, and the fourth arch cleft develops are all known as the cervical sinus. All right, they obliterate by expanding the sixth arch. Okay. Talking about the pharyngeal clefts. Okay. If we have 6 arches and these arches are divided from each other, we should get to know that we have 6 clefts too. We have 5 clefts. Okay. And from these clefts, only the first one is important. Only the first one differentiates into the external auditory meatus, right, and the tympanic cavity. The rest of the clefts, they obliterate. That means they degenerate. Okay, they go out. They are not of use again. All right. So talking about the cartilage derivatives of the pharyngeal arches, I told you that the pharyngeal arch contains the CAN, that's a cartilage, the artery, and the nerve. So the artery and the nerve, we got to see that, okay, they actually don't really differentiate into any structures, but the cartilages differentiate into structures. I don't know if I think these are derivatives of the pharyngeal cartilage. All right. You could see that the first pharyngeal cartilage develops into the mesenchymal cartilage, right? And the second pharyngeal cartilage develops into the stylohyoid ligaments, okay? And the third pharyngeal cartilage develops into the greater horn of hyoid bone. The fourth pharyngeal cartilage develops into the thyroid cartilage, okay? And the fifth the sixth pharyngeal cartilage develops into the cricoid cartilage. Okay, observing this, you could see that there is no fifth pharyngeal cartilage. We have just the fourth and the we have just the fourth and we have just the fourth and the sixth cartilage. Okay, and the fifth cartilage are actually is not derived because the fifth arch obliterates. Okay, so you could see these various derivatives. These are good MCQ questions. The first pharyngeal cartilage develops into what, the second into what, the third into what, and so on and so forth. Okay, so what are the mesenchymal derivatives of the pharyngeal arches? Okay, I will take these arches one by one, and when writing these arches, you could observe really that they don't write the fifth arch. All right, this is, I'm always reminding you this, that the fifth arch actually obliterate. Okay, it like it goes off. It's not included in anything. It's degenerate. Okay, so the mesenchymal derivatives, all right. The first pharyngeal arch develops into the maxillary, right? The maxilla. Mesenchymal, I'm thinking like it's the bony side, right? The bony derivatives, all right. Part of the temporal bone, the mesenchymal cartilage, the mandible, the malleus is like anterior ligament of malleus, right? The first pharyngeal arch mostly develops into like components of your face. Okay. So the second pharyngeal arch develops into the stapes, the Richard cartilage, the styloid process, the stylohyoid ligament, the lesser horn and upper horn of the hyoid bone. The third pharyngeal arch develops into the greater horn and the lower part of the body of the hyoid bone. The fourth and the sixth pharyngeal arches, they actually fuse and develop into single structures. That's the laryngeal cartilage, right? Also develops into the thyroid, cricoid, arytenoid, the corniculate, and the cuneiform. Okay, I hope you are following up on this great tutorial. All right, you can see the various arches and the structures they develop into. Okay, I think we didn't take this heading well. This is mesenchymal derivatives of the pharyngeal arches, and these are focused on the cartilages. All right. So we'll still be talking about the mesenchymal derivatives, but we'll be focusing on the muscles that develop from and these arches. Right. You can see that the first arch, the muscles of mastication, you have your temporalis, you have your masseter, you have your medial and lateral pterygoids, and they actually develop from the pharyngeal, the first pharyngeal arch. You have the myelohyoid, anterior belly of digastric, your tensor palatini, your tensor tympani, right? Your second pharyngeal arch give rise to muscles of facial expression. Your buccinator, your auricularis, your frontalis, your platissima, right? You could like take up your atlas and look up these muscles in them. Your third pharyngeal arch give rise to the stylopharyngeals, right? Your fourth and sixth, as usual, they fuse to give rise to the cricothyroid and the levator palatini and the superior and inferior constrictors of pharynx, your intrinsic muscles of the larynx. Now, still talking about the mesenchymal derivatives, all right, we'll be going ahead to talk about the nerves, all right. All right, so your first pharyngeal arch give rise to the trigeminal nerve, and the trigeminal nerve is actually the maxillary and the mandibular nerve, okay. And your second pharyngeal arch give rise to the facial nerve. Your third pharyngeal arch give rise to the glossopharyngeal nerve, and your fourth pharyngeal arch give rise to the superior laryngeal nerve. Your sixth pharyngeal arch give rise to the recurrent laryngeal nerve, and all these are branches of the vagus nerve. You could see that in the nerves, your fourth pharyngeal arch and your sixth pharyngeal arch are not fusing. All right. Now, talking about the mesenchymal derivatives, we'll be talking about the arteries. All right. Your first pharyngeal arch develops into the maxillary arch, the artery. Your second pharyngeal arch develops into the hyoid artery and the stapedial artery. Your third pharyngeal arch develops into the internal carotid artery. Your fourth pharyngeal arch develops into the proximal part of the right subclavian artery, and so on and so forth. The mesenchymal derivatives, I think that's the ectodermal derivatives. Now we'll be talking about the endodermal derivatives or the pharyngeal pouches. The endoderm, that's the inside, right? Inside the inner, right? And the first pharyngeal arch actually develops into the tympanic, right? That's your middle ear, your tympanic cavity, having the auditory, that's a eustachian tube. All right, the second pharyngeal arch develops into the palatonsil. Your third pharyngeal arch develops into the inferior parathyroid gland and your thymus. And your fourth pharyngeal pouch develops into the superior parathyroid gland, your optimal branchial body, and so on and so forth. I hope you guys are following this lecture up. Just a nice one. The pharyngeal apparatus is actually a good subject in the anatomy where MCQ questions are actually derived from. So still talking about the derivatives of the pharyngeal apparatus. This is just like an overview. This is just like a summary of the pharyngeal apparatus, listing all the pharyngeal arches and their derivatives when it comes to the nerve, when it comes to the skeletal, when it comes to the pouch derivatives, when it comes to the muscular derivatives, when it comes to the arch derivative. Now this is a good place to like pause this video and actually read out. Just a good place to pause this video and actually read out all these derivatives. Okay. So what are the developmental abnormalities in the pharyngeal apparatus? Okay. You can see that the external region of preauricular fistulas, all right, region of lateral cervical cyst and fistulas. Okay, this is just like fistulas. Okay, it's just based on fistulas, right, where the development is not really proper. Okay guys, with this we have come to the end of our tutorials, and we spoke about the pharyngeal apparatus. We got to see that the pharyngeal apparatus is divided into the arches, the pouches, and the clefts and the membrane, and we actually got to see the derivatives of these various parts. We got to see that they derive the skeletal bones, the muscular bones, they derive into nerves, and so on and so forth. We got to see that the fifth pharyngeal arch actually degenerates and it's not like keeping up. Okay guys, so with this I would like to call it an end to this tutorial. I would like to say, if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel, kindly do subscribe to our YouTube channel, the MBBS Nigeria YouTube channel, because we have so much in stock for you. We have so much coming up for you, and you would love to be part of this movement. Kindly do like and comment on our videos anytime you come through. So thank you guys, and see you guys on the next tutorial. I'll be talking about the parathyroid hormone.